What's up, Canes fans? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Crystal ball to Miami. High school kid. We've been focused on the portal. High school crystal ball from Gabby Rudy. We're going to talk about what that means and who it could potentially be. Also, Mario Cristobal dropped a big hint during the ACC meetings, did an interview with the ACC network, and gave a clue about what could be next in the portal. We'll talk about that. And then a really cool segment we'll be doing for the next week or so, Transfer Spotlight, really diving into some of these new Hurricanes. We talked about them when they committed, but now we're going to dive even deeper. This one is on Sam Brown, the Houston wide receiver, and we'll talk to Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Coogs, who watched Sam Brown closely throughout his career, and he's going to give a different perspective on what the Canes are getting. Really enjoyed that interview. First, I want to talk about our friends at Anijar and Levine. They're not jumping in the portal. They're here in Florida and the absolute best in terms of accident litigators. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, take back control of your life. Call Anijar and Levine. So crystal ball to Miami. Gabby Rudy threw it in for Kalen Mwex. I'm pronouncing that terribly. I can't wait to find out how that really sounds. TK Mwex out of Neptune Beach, Fletcher, Jacksonville area. He is extremely aggressive on film. Guy that was underrated, started blowing up with offers when the spring evaluation period started. Miami was one of those schools that went out to see him. Offered him once they saw him. He's listed 6'4", 340. I heard he's actually bigger than that for some folks who have seen him recently. Very nasty on film. Mauler, just very aggressive. Originally from the Chicago area. He's picked up offers from Auburn, South Carolina, UCF. More will come as more teams see him, but Miami's hoping to shut the door on his recruitment. Gabby just put a crystal ball in for TK Mwex. I would co-sign that one. I think a commitment's imminent. Could have a commitment video on the way. So if he commits, go to YouTube. You may see an instant reaction from us, me and Pete, Canes Insight, breaking down his game, going through the huddle, etc. But for now, crystal ball to Miami. We'll watch that situation closely, but Miami could be adding an offensive line to its room. They parted ways, mutual parting with Lamar Williams, offensive lineman out of the Havana, Florida area. So Miami's evaluating constantly, and they have identified this player, TK Mwex, as someone that can help them right away once he trims down a little bit of his weight. They think he could be an instant impact guy with big-time upside to grow and play early. So keep an eye on that one. That's the crystal ball. Shout out to Gabby. The portal continues to roll. We talked about high school. High school's going to kick up. We'll be talking a lot more high school on this podcast. We did the bank a couple days ago. We're going to keep talking high school as the week goes forward, the month goes forward, right into official visit season. But the portal is not done. Mario Cristobal had a quote, met with the ACC network on May 14th, talking about Miami's efforts in the portal. And he said, "We're still on the hunt. We need more help at the defensive line position. Portal season is never over, so we're always at work. Hopefully, we'll be able to solidify that here in the next couple of days or so." To me, based on what I know, he was talking about Tyler Barron, the 6'4", 260-pound defensive end out of Tennessee. Ole Miss is in the mix. May need a waiver if he goes to a school like LSU, which has been a recent player. SEC is very strict on interconference transfers. Louisville, he's originally committed there. I don't see them as a factor. USC in the mix. But to me, the team to beat is Miami. I think Cristobal's quote shed some light on what he's thinking there with Tyler Barron. Keep an eye out for that one. That might be another instant reaction video. If he commits, go straight to YouTube. You will see something from us at Canes Insight. All right, now switching to the transfer portal spotlight. Let's dig in deep on wide receiver transfers, Sam Brown with Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Coogs.
All right, really excited about this guest joining the Canes Insight podcast right now as we do this transfer series. Obviously, Miami has done a lot of work in the portal, as has most schools across the country. But Parker Ainsworth joining us now from Locked On Coogs. Parker, appreciate you joining us tonight. I'm pulling up your Twitter page here. Canes fans, give him a follow. You see him with the Kelvin Sampson's background there. Listen, I didn't bring it up before, but Miami and Houston had a nice battle in the NCAA
that happened
a couple years ago. But obviously Houston in a great position up there in the basketball program. But we're talking Sam Brown tonight, right? Obviously wide receiver, recently made his decision to transfer to Miami. And then, there's been a lot of crossover here. Houston, Miami, De'Aaron King, one of the most successful quarterbacks recently for Miami. Shannon Dawson, offensive coordinator from Miami here. So we have some different topics to dive into tonight, Parker, but appreciate you joining us tonight. How are you doing?
I'm good. I gotta ask. We got to know each other a little bit off pod, and now you're bringing back oh, Miami's taken all of our guys in the last
I'm sorry,
completely
sorry.
coming back down to earth.
Listen, the city of Miami returned the favor a little bit. Patrick Paul, Dolphins drafted him, so
Yeah,
it's not all bad vibes. We got a lot of stuff to get into tonight, but Sam Brown, let's start there, right? Because this is the most recent topic here. Miami fans really excited about this guy. Just looking at his measurables, the athletic ability, it looks like he's going to bring to the table. Guy who was there at Houston for a few years, came over from West Virginia previously. But your impressions of Sam Brown in your time dealing with him, and as a player, what does he bring to the table?
well, he's a veteran, right? So he played 4 years of college football thus far. Played 2 at West Virginia and then 2 at Houston. And he really has grown up a lot. In his first year at Houston, there was an incident where he and a teammate got in a shoving match on the sideline that sounds like was about hey, you were supposed to run this because they were in that coverage, and that kind of escalated to people shoving each other. And then he got in another tussle with a Tulsa player at the end of the season that same year. And then this last year when he shows up at Houston, he's kind of the most dependable person in the receiving corps. Just a lot of maturity and growth out of the kid, which you love to see in college football, right? It's what college football is all about, is kids growing up and playing football and having fun under the lights. But honestly, I because he grew up so much in his time in Houston, I was kind of shocked at how productive he was on the field his last year there. He led the Big 12 at one point, or for the majority of the season, in yards. He didn't actually have a touchdown until the middle of the season, because he was technically on the depth chart the third target. He was just the most reliable one. He didn't have a whole lot of drops. He was open. He ran his routes crisply, and then they get in the end zone or near the red zone and try and throw a jump ball to number one guy, number two guy. And I think he probably wanted to go find somewhere where he could maybe be higher in the totem pole, maybe a little more pass happy offense. Houston did have a coaching change recently. And I told you pre-pod, I'll tell you on pod, I'm sad to see him go. He's really talented, and we got to see him grow up, and it feels like we got to watch him grow up, and now someone else gets to enjoy that, honestly.
It's interesting that the first thing you brought up was that incident, because as soon as he commits to Miami, you know how the trolling goes online. I see, there's opposing fans who, Florida State fan, I think it was, who initially tweeted out the video of that incident. And you saw, I think, a number of his former teammates there at Houston, come to his defense and pretty much say he was the best teammate and things of that nature. So that speaks to your point of his growth.
Yeah, I saw one guy, Jack Freeman, and Jack Freeman won awards for his own sportsmanship, right? So obviously he would know something about it. He was one of the first ones I saw come out and say this incident did not define Sam in our locker room. It does not need to define Sam in any other locker room, right? He's a kid. He grew up, and it sounds like really that incident did start with a simple thing as hey, they were in cover, whatever, you're supposed to be running an under, and it just escalated because it's in the heat of the moment. And frankly, if Houston were a better football team that season, that might have been the kind of those heat of the moment things, right? When people slam the iPad down or whatever, when you're good, it's passion, and when you're bad, it's anger, right? I think if Houston had been good, we would have called it a passionate moment, and instead it was a disappointing year, so it wouldn't, right?
As a player, you talked about how he ended up really getting things going as the season went on there, but it seems like he's the type of guy who has an extra gear, really has the ability to make things happen after the catch. How would you describe his skill set?
He definitely has the extra gear. I think the deal is he's like once he gets the ball in his hand, he's a one cut and go kind of guy. He's not the make a bunch of moves and make a bunch of dudes miss. He's going to make the first guy miss and just hit on the burners and try and outrace everybody to the end zone from there. He was open for Houston a lot on like deep crossers and things like that, where he would just beat the corner line of scrimmage. He might have been the third read, but because of that, he's pretty far down the field. A lot of big play kind of stuff in that sense. I think that the biggest thing that Miami's getting in this kid is the kind of guy that finds ways to be open. And for Houston, he was the third read, so kind of like when you really needed him to be open, right?
How would you describe the quarterback situation over there? Obviously, Donovan Smith at quarterback. Starting to hear his name as a potential guy, as a riser for draft stock next year. But the expectation from looking from Miami's perspective, and I know Miami fans are excited about him pairing with Cam Ward, right? So how would you kind of describe how his relationship was with Donovan Smith there, and how Donovan Smith kind of matured throughout the year, just to kind of give Canes fans an idea of the situation he's coming from and what he's coming into.
Donovan was he transferred from Texas Tech. He was a rotational quarterback there, and then did not win the starting job. Transferred to Houston, Big 12 football to Big 12 football. He was a wide receiver in high school, actually, at Bishop Gorman High School in Nevada, before transferring and playing quarterback his senior year at a much smaller high school in the Panhandle in Texas. And I really think he's still developing as a guy. The reason you see him climb draft boards is because he's listed at 6'5", 245. I mean, he's built like a pro quarterback. And he's a dual threat running quarterback, but not the elusive speed type, the kind of guy that runs through people's face a few times. And honestly, as far as his relationship with Sam goes, so Houston's number one receiver was a kid named Matthew Golden, who's since transferred to Texas when the coaching change happened. And there was a real, with him being a high caliber recruit and him being the, top returning receiver and all those kinds of things. There was a lot of people worried that Donovan was not meshing with Matthew because he was throwing Sam the ball so much. And that, Sam had all the yards and Matthew had the jump ball touchdowns and the back and forth that creates. But I thought Donovan handled that pretty well. And like I said, it was the kind of thing where Sam was the third read a lot of the time, but that meant that when Donovan was kind of scrambling around for his life, he's working to his third read. He finds Sam Brown somewhere. My impression was that they got along very well. I don't have any reason to not think that. I think this is really more about in the coaching change. I think Houston's going to run the football a lot more next year. And if Sam's not the first receiver on the depth chart or on the totem pole or on the depth chart, honestly, a run heavy offense with guys trying to go pro, like there's better situations out there. And I think
I mean, and your answer makes sense. I wasn't implying that he had any sort of issue with Donovan as personally, but again, from what we understand, and we'll kind of get into it now, but as you know, Shannon Dawson, I wouldn't say and we've gone over it on our show, it's not your prototypical air raid, right? Especially with Mario Cristobal, there's gonna be a lot of power run game elements, mixed in. But there's an expectation that with Cam Ward and some of these weapons that Miami has, they're going to be spreading the ball out. So your answer makes a little more sense in that sense.
And Sam played for Dawson in Dawson's last year in Houston, right? So like they've got some chemistry between the two of them too. I'm sure played into it a little bit.
Yeah, and look, well, let's get into that a little bit, right? Because we've talked about Sam Brown a bit here, and that to me it's such a big part of it. We talked to a guy from Marshall today, one of the Marshall reporters, because Miami got a transfer from Marshall as well from the cornerback spot, and like when you look at these transfers from the G5 to and Houston's not G5, but when you would
it did just move up. Like it still feels it in
right.
some ways.
But
It's not, but it feels like it in some ways. So I get it.
right. And you see these moves more so where a coach moves, right? That's more what I'm getting at. Like they're not going to bring a guy with them if they don't believe that they can play at whatever level they're at now, right? So that had to have been a huge thing for Brown coming over. But Dawson, I mean, let's talk about him a little bit. Your impressions of him over there. Clayton Tune, I know that was his,
Yeah.
kind of his big project there. But obviously there's always been a reputation for high-powered offenses in Houston, right? At
Yeah.
least in the last, I don't want to put a time frame on it. That's always been what it is there, right? So,
No, since the Case Keenum days, right? I mean,
right.
Case Keenum, Greg Ward. People forget Kevin Cobb before all that.
Mhm.
I think the truth here, though, is that Shannon Dawson came in. He had Clayton Tune, he had Tank Dell, and the truth was that he tried to balance the game more. I think than people. Dana Holgerson was the head coach. People anticipated 70 passes a game. It was closer to 60-40 pass to run. And the 2020, my numbers, I'm getting confused in my head now, but the 2021 season, they had a really talented running back named Alton McCaskill. And that was when it was smooth sailing, right? They got to the American Athletic Conference championship game. They lost by 14 to Cincinnati. That was the year Cincinnati went to the college football playoff, right? Like that was a really good Houston team to beat Auburn in the Birmingham Bowl. So that Houston team, then they lose the running back actually to a knee injury, and then he would eventually transfer after that. But lose the running back to a knee injury his sophomore year. And without that running game, it was just kind of Clayton Tune and them guys throwing around a little bit. Now Tank Dell's Tank Dell, and we've seen what he does at the pro level too. So obviously he was special. But I would point as far as Shannon Dawson things, Tank was everyone knew he was getting the football and he was still open, right? So there's something going on there between Tank and the coach that Tank works out well. And Sam was much younger when he played under Dawson at Houston. So I don't know how close that on-field relationship was, as much as they might have just been closer off of it, honestly.
Right. Well, and again, I just think he probably knew the talent level and realized that he could probably help at Miami. And look, Miami's got a receiver. I'm not saying he's Tank Dell's level, but Xavier Estrepo, a guy who always seems like he's open in Miami. So looks like Dawson's got something going there with the slot receivers for sure.
Well, and for sure. And I don't know what the relationship comes from, but before Sam committed to Miami, there was some video of him and Cam Ward out working out. So like they at least knew this was on the table. I don't know what their relationship was.
I think he was already in the portal from what I know.
He hadn't committed though, is what I mean. He was in the portal though, yeah.
Definitely. But that's today's day and age, man. It's like pro football. These guys, they connect with each other. You just got to connect on social media, on Instagram there. And sometimes that's all it takes, a quick workout.
You say pro football, it feels almost like pro basketball, and like they're going to meet up for some summer runs and they decide to join. Though, I mean, you're in Miami, the way Miami Heat get put together in 2010, right? Like, oh, it'd be fun to play together, guys. Like that's what it feels like is happening here.
Listen, I might have to clip that right there, Parker, because Canes fans, they're always optimistic, but it does feel like Mario and the staff has somewhat gone all in on this year, right? Because again, how many teams can say they feel like they have the quarterback, right? The trench play, and we're still months away from the season, right? But it does feel somewhat like that for sure. Couple more things before I let you go here. And you mentioned it. It's very interesting because a lot of Canes fans tend to think, well, Mario Cristobal likes to run the football, likes to pound the rock. He's an offensive line guy. But it seems like Dawson himself, Shannon Dawson, really tried to mix and run as much as possible. And Dana Holgerson, we know he is as air raid as it gets, right?
Yeah, and in Houston, he was the offense coordinator when Case Keenum came through. He went off and got to be the head coach of West Virginia before coming back as the head coach to Houston. But when we think of Case Keenum, we think of 50 touchdown passing or 50 passing touchdown seasons and those kinds of things. Um, I I would be interested in though when you say Shannon Dawson and Cristobal both like to run the ball. There was one notorious blunder last season where they decided to run the ball, and I don't mean to bring up bad news, but I would wonder whose call that was out of those two. I do think though that Shannon kind of kept it. Again, it was not 50-50. It was still more pass than run in his time at Houston. But I wonder if he was the one keeping it to 60-40 more so than maybe Dana would have wanted. Whose decision making that was, if Dana learned something when his time away from Houston and or whatever led to that, because they were not they ran air raid concepts, but not air raid like in the stat sheet by any stretch.
Now, we'll wrap it up with this. Obviously, new era for Houston. Willie Fritz, new head coach down there, has a great resume coming from Tulane. What are things? I mean, what's the vision of his program as best as you could describe early on, right? Because it's obviously a bit different than what the vision was previously. And listen, Dana won games over there, right? So I know that there were some ups and downs. That's college football, but Fritz is looking to build something sustainable, I feel like.
Yeah, and one thing that he's keyed in on very much is he wants to keep Houston area kids in Houston, and he's like been very intentional about preaching that message. You're in South Florida, you get it. When you're in a hub like that, the Houston area, South Florida, the Southern California, like if you can keep the local kids, you got a shot, right? Fritz is very old school and disciplined, and I mean he wears shirts that say "Play through the echo of the whistle," right? Like I mean he's in his 70s. That's part of it. I appreciate that at every level he's been at, he kind of got to a program that was not winning games, whether it was Sam Houston, Tulane, Blinn Junior College, and he turned them into a program that was, right? We saw Tulane knock off Caleb Williams and USC in the Cotton Bowl, right? Sam Houston was playing in Division II, or I guess it was FCS or whatever they called it back then, national championships, right? Blinn Junior College playing in junior college national championships. He's done winning at the place. It just takes some time to turn it around. I got to be honest, a lot because of the time to turn it around and guys like Sam or Matthew, I mentioned guys that have transferred out of the program. People are understanding that 2024 might not be the prettiest year, right? Like you got to, put the car in reverse to change directions a little bit. Like it's not going to be the prettiest year of football. The goal is the vision. It's what comes next and what comes down the line when he gets a few of his own kids in. And I'm optimistic about that for sure.
The man's a winner, and I'm sure he's got to lay the foundation and really build from that. And I think that he'll do that within the next couple years, right? Like you said, it may not be this year, but there's such a strong base of talent. Big 12 now, so I see it. And look, Houston, it's a great market there for NIL as well. For it's a big city, so I think they'll do just fine in this changing landscape of college athletics. But Parker, man, it's been great getting some Houston insight from you tonight. Again, Locked On Coogs. We've had so much back and forth here that I don't think this will be the last time that we have to have you on the show, man. So
yeah, but next time, can we be getting one of the guys? I mean, you guys, can we be on the receiving end at some point?
Listen, that's on you guys, man. That's on you guys. I'll tell you, SMU, because of Rhett Lashley, has swooped in and gotten a bunch of Miami guys the last few years. So I know it's in Dallas, but it's on you guys. There's always guys up for grabs. So just gotta go get them. But Parker, man, appreciate you coming on the show tonight.
Of course, man. I was in with Go Cougs. There's some combination there, but thank you for having me on.